Good afternoon. Thanks for joining with us for another edition of Christian Conversion Chats. And this week, we've got with us another member of the Assembly and at Gospel Hall with us to tell us how he became a Christian. Hi, Daniel.
How are we doing, Gordon? You all right?
I'm all right, yeah. Thanks for joining with us. So I think we'll start, Daniel, by asking you, where were you born and brought up?
Well, I was born and brought up in Fife. Brought up on a farm, a small 90-acre farm, just outside of Craigrothy. We've got like sheep, and we used to have a lot of hens, but we had sheep from a young age and dogs and stuff like that, and we had some arable. But I've been born and brought up here in Fife all my days, more or less, until I went to uni and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a bit about your family then. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got two older brothers and an older sister. I've got Johnny and Paul, who are my older brothers, and I've got my sister Ruth, who's the eldest of us all. So there's four of us all together. So
you say it was a religious family then?
Yeah. No, they were all Christian. They're all Christians, and I was brought up in a Christian home. So really, from the word go, brought up learning stories about the Bible, learning stories about God and Jesus and salvation, and going to the Arnott Gospel Hall in Kennaway every Sunday, being taken to Sunday school and maybe even sometimes dragged along to Sunday school. But it was we're brought up in a Christian home, yeah.
So what's your kind of earliest memories of the message of the gospel? You've heard the gospel there. So what's your kind of earliest memories of the gospel, and did you understand it? And when did you kind of first understand it?
Well, I suppose, like, I've probably got so many memories of being at the hall and hearing the gospel, but actually probably not understanding it from the word go. I was just listening to the man because everybody else was listening to him, kind of thing. And then until you start listening and actually trying to understand what he's saying, it can just be a bit of a complex thing to try and grasp at a young age. Mm-hmm. Is the story of salvation and how Jesus can forgive your sins. And I remember when I was really young, I can't remember how old I would have been, but I remember I came down to my mum, and then my mum used to work until about midnight, 1 o'clock, and then till 1 o'clock in the morning she'd be doing the books or something like that. She'd be doing paperwork, and I remember coming down to her in tears, thinking that, because I remember hearing about the rapture. I think it was the story of the rapture, or the chap was talking about how Jesus is going to come back and he's going to take all the Christians away. And I remember just waking up one night terrified and ran down and thinking, is my mum and dad still here, kind of thing, and also just a general fear of death in general, really, because when you hear these things at a young age, you think it's quite a lot to kind of grasp at a young age. Mm-hmm. But my mum just quietly calmed me, and she just sent me back to my bed, and so she took me back to my bed anyway. But that was a very, very young age. I can't actually remember what she told me, but it must have been something calming and reassuring anyway. I must have been about 4 or something like that when that happened, but that's my earliest memory of maybe trying to understand things about salvation and stuff like that. But I wouldn't have said I would have said that it wasn't I never made a profession of faith then, if you see what I mean. That probably came about 5 years later, when I was about 9 years old. When I remember just lying in my bed, and after going to countless gospel meetings and stuff like that, I made made a profession of faith when I was 9 years old, lying in my bed, and I was in a bunk bed. I remember this. I was in a bunk bed, and so I couldn't exactly kneel down next to it, because you hear everybody saying how they got down next to their beds and stuff like that. But I was in a bunk bed, so I couldn't exactly get down next to it. So I was just lying there, and I made a profession of faith to the Lord.
So that's when you were about 9 years old, you said, yeah?
Yeah.
And was it like a particular preacher that you remember? Was that like a particular gospel service, or what kind of led up to that point? Do you remember?
My memory is terrible at the best of times, so I probably couldn't tell you who the speaker was. But I think gradually, as being brought up in a Christian home, you start to kind of grasp and understand little bits and start piecing them together until you kind of understand, get a basic understanding of it, kind of thing, to then take that step of faith in the Lord Jesus.
Mm-hmm. So what happened then? I guess you would come down and tell your mom and dad about it.
Well, I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember if I told anybody or not. Actually, it was. If I really can't remember. I think I might have done, or I must have done. But I just can't remember who it was. I said to, kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, so you were quite young then, just 9 years old, you were still at school, not primary school at that point.
Yeah, it was primary school.
So, in terms of the next few years, then, I guess you would just be going to school. You'd still be going to Sunday school, and then Bible class after that. Can you tell us a bit about the next kind of few years and what led up to you then being baptised and becoming a member of the church and at Gospel Hall?
Yeah. Well, I think we used to have sheep up at Fascally. Now, this is going back a number of years. We used to have sheep up at Fascally, and they hold the TCYC Christian camp, youth camps up there. So I went to junior camp. Now, I can't remember the age for junior camps, but I think that I must have been going before I was saved, and then you go into seniors and stuff like that. So I must have been saved kind of between junior camp and senior camp at Fascally, kind of thing. But I went along. We'd go up to that, and it was always good fun. In terms of going to school, when I was at primary school at Craigrothy, the principal there, she used to. It was a very small school, but we used to do. There were some days we'd just sing some hymns. Like she'd play the piano and we'd all sing a few hymns and stuff like that, and it was really quite nice. And I was thinking to myself, oh well, there's quite a few. There might be quite a few folk who actually quite like the idea of God and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I went to high school that I realised that wasn't the case. High school, I mean, I loved primary school, I think, but when it came to high school, I think I realised that it was a different ball game if you were a Christian in high school. Because I remember I had a biology teacher who, when we sat down, I think must have been in the first couple of weeks anyway, and he said something like, "Now we're going to be talking about evolution now, and hands up who believes in evolution." And I think, or who's heard of evolution. And I think everybody in the class more or less put their hands up. And he then says, "Does everybody agree that we're kind of singing? So we're singing from the hymn sheet that we believe that this is how we came into being." And I put my hand up and I said no. But then what really hurt me was that he basically then went to town on me with all of his science background and all the rest of it, and I had nothing to say, really. I had nothing to kind of to give back to him in a sense of, not necessarily an argument, but just in a sense that, no, this is why I believe what I believe, kind of thing. So I had nothing really to kind of counter him with. But I thought, he's my teacher, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and keep plodding on and just, keep my head down as best I can, really. But I think when I was getting I think, how old was I? I would have been in about 12, I think. I think it was 12 or 13 when I got baptised. I came to the elders and I said, I want to be baptised. Because I'd been to baptism before and seeing lots of people getting baptised. And it was then, I suppose, that would probably be when I made my public profession of faith, really, as everybody does when they're baptised. So, yeah, so at the age of 12 or 13, I think I wasn't. I mean, my memory is awful, but it was it was about that time when I got baptised. Yeah, so.
And how did you find that in terms of that public confession, taking that step of obedience that Lord Jesus asked Christians to kind of take? Did you find that really strengthened your faith? Did it, or did it encourage you?
I felt, yeah, it did encourage me. I felt like I was doing the right thing by the Lord, and what He's asked us, what He's commanded us to do, and stuff like that. And I even then went further on to trying to talk to my friends in high school, because I played rugby. I'd had a lot of rugby friends, and a lot of pals in high school, and I would try and talk to them about Christianity and God and salvation and the gospel. But nobody was really willing to, hear it, if you see what I mean, or they would just, they'd just ridicule you and stuff like that. And it didn't really, it made me feel, I thought to myself, James, is this really what it's like? If you're trying to explain to, or if you're trying to talk to someone about these things, that they really just don't want to hear it, and they start ridiculing you, and it really then just kind of made me think, okay, well, I'm just going to I'll just shy away from it a little bit, really. Maybe not bring it up as often, maybe only bring it up if folk ask. But like when they would ask, they would really only be asking just to make fun of you, if you see what I mean. Like they just poke their heads out of the crowd and just say, "Here, Dan, what do you think of this?" And just to get a reaction, or just to make fun of you, really. So again, I would just kind of just put my head down and either just carry on with a different conversation with them, or so high school was probably a difficult time, really.
Yeah, as it is for lots of Christians, isn't it? It's difficult.
Yeah.
You want to fit in and things, and then if you're ridiculed, it's difficult, particularly at that age, isn't it? But you mentioned about the fact that this science teacher kind of ridiculed you over sort of evolution. Did that prompt you at that stage, or maybe later on in life, to actually research a bit about the science of it, the evidence for creation and the Bible, as opposed to sort of evolution and so on?
Well, maybe not at that stage, because I think I was just trying to get through school. I was just trying to get through the day, as every high schooler is. They're just trying to get through the classes and But I think maybe towards later on, when I went down to university in Cheshire, I probably started doing a bit more research. I'd listened to a lot of apologetics and creation-based scientists. So scientists who don't hold the evolutionary view, but hold a creation view, that the world isn't old, that the Earth and the universe aren't old. They're only about 6,000 or 10,000 years old, thereabouts, in that sort of bracket. As opposed to the billions and billions of years, which seems to give the evolutionists a bit more wiggle room to kind of spout their nonsense, really. But yeah.
So when you found you did a bit of that research, did you find it made you more confident then when you were having these conversations that you had?
It did. Yeah. It would make me. It would at least give me. It would give me more of a more substance, if you see what I mean, to kind of maybe just if somebody was to say something to me, I'd have an answer for it, to then make them think, oh, well, that he might be onto something, or he might be, that could be true. So instead of me just kind of shy, just kind of going, oh, well, it would be a case of I'd actually have maybe a half decent answer to give to them, Now, I wouldn't call myself a scientist and try and explain away the whole science, but if I can kind of understand it and I'm able to explain it to myself, I should be able to explain it to others.
Right, so you mentioned about going to university there then. So how was it you kind of chose what to study, what kind of work you wanted to get into?
Well, it was difficult because as I was coming towards the end of my end of high school, I was studying music, higher music, and I thought I was wanting to be a musical therapist. Probably go to uni and do a music degree and stuff like that. But my problem is I hardly ever practiced my instruments. I'd only probably practice enough just to get me through, get me through lessons or get me through my exams, which I ended up getting an A for. I'm pleased to say. But I think I didn't go straight to uni after high school. I actually took a year out and ended up getting a job at the Amazon warehouse in Dunfermline, and all that. And then I realised, this isn't any use to me at all, because I was still helping Dad on the farm, you see. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to do music, I may as well keep music as a hobby. Because my idea was, if I was going to do music at uni, I'd keep farming as a hobby, and make music my career, or vice versa, make farming my career and music my hobby. So it ended up being that I did an SVQ, so basically like an apprenticeship in agriculture at here at the farm, and I still play my musical instruments. I still play violin and piano, just as a hobby kind of thing. So yeah.
So you're now a shepherd, yeah? Or...
Yeah, I do contract shepherding, a bit of tractor driving, and so I go around different farms, and either lambing. If they want me for lambing, then I'll go and help them with the lambing. If they want me to do shearing, I'll go and do shearing. Yeah, essentially that's, I'm self-employed and just go around working on other folks' farms, really.
And I believe you've set some records for the amount of sheep that you can shear in a day. Is that right? Or...
Yeah, well, that's my own personal record. It's not exactly a world record, but yeah, I can think my in 8 hours I can do 320. But since that day there was still like another 80 or 100 left. That I ended up doing 350 in a day. So and the lad that was shearing next to me, he did about 300, or he did about 360 or something like that. So yeah, it was a long, hard day, that, I'll tell you.
And you don't know what the Guinness World Record is, or no?
I think the world record at the moment, because there's different records for like lambs and ewes. I think for ewes, which are bigger sheep, which are the bigger sheep, I think the record stands at 740 or 730 in 8 hours. So, and then for lambs, I think someone's done about 800 in a day or something like that. So it's, yeah, I mean, but those boys are shearing every day, 365 days a year, more or less, so they're fit, they're fit to do it, to be doing those sorts of numbers, and they're good at it as well. So,
Right. So you mentioned when you were at university. So when you were at university, were there any kind of other Christians there, or were there other kind of Christian students around that time? Maybe not in university, but in other universities that you maybe met up with and encouraged you in your Christian pathway? Or?
I think when I went down to university, I was really worried that it was going to be like high school again, and I was thinking to myself, you know what, I'm far away from my parents and from home. It's a 5-hour drive down there, so it's not as if I could just disappear back home. But I would have said I would have enjoyed university better than I did high school, because folk were more they were more polite, shall we say, than kids at high school, kind of thing. So I think folk grow up a bit more, but I think there were a couple of Christians at the college where I was, but they weren't. I don't think they actually held the same. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, not necessarily denomination, but like
the same theology or doctrine.
Same theology and doctrine, which kind of, it never really discouraged me from talking to them, but they would really get not necessarily upset, but I knew whenever I tried to talk to them or whenever I spoke to them about such things, they would kind of like get a bit on the defensive side, and I thought, all right, okay. So I just kind of, I just kind of never really, well, I would see them and I would chat away to them, but it was like when it came to discussing theology and doctrines and stuff like that, it just kind of, you'd only get so far in the conversation before they'd get upset about something, and you just think, right, okay, well, we'll leave it at that kind of thing, But I mean, I think there was a Christian union there, but there wasn't many who went to it, and I went to the Gospel Hall, the Heathfield Gospel Hall in Crewe, for the Sunday morning. So at least I had someone, at least I had a bit of fellowship there. Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned that university was down that way near Crewe, but was it not like part of your university was up in Scotland as well?
Yeah. So I did. Basically, how it works, the course that I did in Cheshire, it was 2 years of what's called a foundation degree, and it's basically the first 2 years of a Bachelor of Science. And the third year, you could top up at another university. So it would either be Harper Adams, which was down in the next county, another hour and a half south. But I decided to go to Edinburgh at SRUC to top up my degrees. So it was a case I did 2 years down in Cheshire and then went back to Edinburgh to get my Bachelor of Science.
And I guess when you were in Edinburgh, you would know a lot more Christians, that maybe not from your kind of university, but from other universities around.
No, that's right. No, there was it was good because there were a few students who were either at Napier or Edinburgh University. They would go to the when they were staying in Edinburgh, they would go to the Gorgie Gospel Hall, and they'd put on little Bible studies, which was nice. I went along to a few of them when I could. I can't remember which nights they were, but no, I think it was at least once a week they'd have some Bible studies, and there'd be a good few, maybe a good 10 or sometimes 10 or 15. Other times there'd be less, but folks gathered there. But no, they'd do some Bible studies, yeah.
And that was a kind of encouraging time, then.
It was a good, it was a good encouraging time. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. So after, I guess, university time, then what happened then? Did you go back down south to work, or did you work up here?
Well, I think, well, when I was doing my third year at Edinburgh, I was part-time at a neighbour's farm as well, which helped bring in some much needed cash. But it was actually when we went to the Highland Show, and as I was walking out the gate, the head of agriculture at the time, who I remembered from my studying days in Cheshire, he was stood at the gate, and I thought, I recognise that man. So I wandered over and said hello, and he said to me that they were needing practical instructors. So they had a few job openings for practical instructors at Reseed College. So I thought, oh, this is good. I'm fresh out of university, and I've managed to get a job interview lined up. So it was working out pretty well, I thought. So went down for an interview and then got a job as a practical instructor at Reseed College, teaching sheep practicals, fencing, animal health, health and safety, of all things. I think any new practical instructor gets dumped with health and safety to teach, because it's an important subject, but it is really, really not an easy subject to try and teach.
So did you enjoy the teaching side of that as opposed to like being a sort of farmer or a shepherd day to day? Or
It was good. It's nothing's really, it's trials obviously, but no, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable, yeah.
Right, so it's been good to hear your stories so far. It's encouraging how you see God has worked in your life. Would you say that God has guided you to where you are just now?
Yes, no, definitely, because I feel, because when I was when I started working down in Cheshire, there was a lot more work to be done in terms of what I had to do at the college, and it got to the point where the shepherd who was working at the college had left, and this was about maybe a month or two before the sheep were due to lamb down there. So I decided, right, if we're going to get through the lambing, I may as well put myself down for to do the shepherding. So I ended up becoming a shepherd, but also doing my teaching, and just keeping my sheep practicals and stuff like that, and fencing and stuff. And so yeah, became the shepherd. But unfortunately, with that work, became I was doing a lot more work over the weekends, and I wasn't able to get to the meetings as much. And then as that kind of went on, it was sad, because it just slowly I just slowly drifted away, because I thought I have to go and do this. I have to go and do that kind of thing, for sheep. And it was just slowly. And, there'd be months where it could be a span of a month or a month and a half when I wouldn't have managed to get to the meeting, which was a shame. So that was a difficult time.
So you decided to come back up then and decide to leave that.
I decided to come back for many reasons, because I did miss being home at times, but I think maybe I wasn't growing as well as I could spiritually for the Lord down there. More to the point that I got involved with young farmers and stuff like that. And it's not, it's all good fun with young farmers, because they do a lot of social activities. They play hockey, they do debates. They do this thing called debate, and it's I got involved with that, and I felt like, because of the stuff I'd watched with regards to apologetics, and watching how the likes of Frank Turek and all those other great, all the other apologists, how they kind of, engaged in a debate. I thought to myself, I quite enjoyed doing that. So I joined the Young Farmers Debate, and it was good fun, but it wasn't like, there was no opening for a Christian debate, if you see what I mean. Like, the topics were set, obviously, because it's a competition, but there was never an opportunity to actually, expand into, say, a Christian's way of thinking in the debate, because they felt like, I remember they were wanting me to. There was a topic I had to discuss, or had to do a speech on, and it was a set speech, so you had to write it out, and you got the topic, and the topic was about marriage. And I remember when, because we have to, in our teams, you have to prep for it and all the rest of it. So in the weeks prior, I'm writing down my speech and all the rest of it, and just everything I can put together and to discuss about marriage. And the team were wanting me to talk about gay marriage. And I says, no, I'm not going to talk about that, because it's, I don't think it's appropriate in my speech. And they were desperate. They were actually saying, no, you have to talk about it, because if we lose, they were putting something above, they were putting winning a speech over something that I felt very strongly about. And I said, no, I'm not going to talk about it. We ended up winning it was because it was for the final, you see, and I think that's why they were getting a bit anxious with me, and they were thinking, oh, he's if he doesn't say it, if he doesn't talk about it, we're going to lose and all the rest of it. Well, we never ended up losing anyway. But it was, it kind of, those sorts of pressures that you find, not necessarily just in the workplace, but even in a social setting as well, which, it's meant to be a social and fun experience and stuff like that. And you can also find yourself in being confronted with difficult friends. And, you've just got to say no, kind of thing,
Yeah. So you could say that you were faithful to the Lord in that situation, and the Lord was faithful to you, because you stood by your principles, but you still won the debate.
Yeah. No, it was quite difficult, because I had a room full of people just desperate for me, and just I mean, they weren't hounding me or anything like that, but they were just niggling me. They were just saying, "Oh, go on, just say it, just one sentence and all the rest." I says, no, it's because the person on the other team was a person of that persuasion, and of course he did talk about it. In fact, I think he overdid it, kind of thing. But yeah. So.
Well, thanks very much, Daniel, for telling us your story.
No problem.
You can see really how God's worked in your life from an early age when you got saved, and then you've recounted all these different experiences where God has helped you, some challenges. Would you say that God's ever let you down?
I wouldn't say that, because one thing I've always struggled to understand is, in terms of things that you pray about. From a young age, I was under the impression if you prayed to God and asked Him for something, He'd grant it to you. He'd always say yes. That was basically my understanding. But as I've grown older, it's kind of understanding that God also says no to prayers. It's not necessarily whether He answers, because He always answers, but it's whether it's a yes answer or a no answer. You've got to be willing to accept that for times. So, or
maybe a not yet answer.
Or a not yet answer. Exactly. Yeah. More to the point, recently, when I was down in Cheshire, I was helping a friend of mine go and pick up a trailer. He'd bought this trailer. Of course, he's not got a truck of his own or a tow ball, so we had to go in my truck to go and pick up this new trailer he's bought. And it was getting pretty dark, and on the way back, he got a phone call from his mother. Now, his mother had been trying to get him, but I think he'd left his phone in the car because he had a couple of missed calls off her. So he rings her back, and it's just like you almost knew that something was wrong, because I knew something was wrong because how he was speaking. Like his voice was getting dead panicky, and he sounded really, really, really worried about something. And then when he got off the phone, he says to me, just if you're able to get me back to my car, because I need to go. I need to get to my car, basically, to go and look for my brother who's gone missing. And I says, "Oh, James, is everything all right?" And he says, "Well, no, it's not," because he says to me that his mum told him that his brother had come storming in from the farm. Now, they've got a dairy farm, and his brother does a lot of work on the farm, so he does a lot of milking, a lot of stuff like that, and it's hard work being a dairy farmer. And he's only a young chap, I think he's only 23, 22 or 23. So he is a young lad, and he came storming in from the farm, and then went storming back out and drove off. Now, from what I understood was that this is very uncharacteristic, and I thought, well, because I knew the young man, he was a good friend, like we were in the same Young Farmers, and I thought that's very uncharacteristic of him. And he then proceeded to tell me that his mum had found on his computer that he was probably looking at ways to commit suicide. And then I realised this is a very serious situation. And he was trying to ring him. My friend who was in the car next to me, he was trying to ring his brother, but apparently it turned out that his brother's phone was broken or something like that, or his phone had been broken for a while. So nobody was able to get in contact with him, and they didn't know where he was. So his mum, his dad, his girlfriend, and his brother just went out in their cars looking for him. And just on the way, when I was taking my friend back to his car, I asked him, because he was on the phone trying to get in touch with other people who might know if he'd got in contact with them or not. I just said, do you mind if I just say a quiet word of prayer, about the situation? And he says, yeah, go ahead. So I said a quiet word of prayer to the Lord, just to deal with the situation. That, just whatever's going through that young man's head, just, Lord, just prevent him from doing any harm to himself, and so it came, I prayed that prayer, and I went back and I dropped my friend off to his car, and then I was to take this trailer back to the farm, you see. So I took the trailer back to the farm, and I dropped it off, and as I was driving back around the corner to the yard past the house and the milking parlour, so between the yard they've got the house and then they've got the milking parlour, and I'm driving around the corner and my lights are shining down the yard, and there's a figure stood still in front of the yard, and it was the young man that it was the brother of my friend who'd gone missing, and everybody had been going out looking for him. They had no phone, so nobody knew where he was.
Mm-hmm.
But he must have come back. He'd come back because his car wasn't there as I was taking the trailer off. You see, I'd driven back, dropped the trailer off, and as I was coming back round, here he was stood. And I thought to myself, I don't know what kind of how you're what you're thinking just now, so I just quietly engaged him in conversation. I just said, here, you want to come and look at this trailer here that I've just brought back? Just anything to try and, not give him not to spook him kind of thing, or make him, think that I know that there's been something wrong. So I was just quietly talking to him about the trailer and walking him around it, and I'm trying to get on the phone to his brother, just to say, send him a text to say that he's come back. And then as I was driving back down the road, before I drove back down the road, I was just standing with him and just chatting away to him, and his girlfriend came back first. So I thought, right, at least somebody else is here. That's And as I was driving back, I left them to it, and I just was driving back down the road, and I passed his brother, his dad, and his mum coming back down the way, and his mum had been in floods of tears. And then on my way back to my house, I'd pulled up in a lay-by, and I'd burst out into tears, just for multitudes of things, really, because for that awful experience that family had been through. And just for, it was strange because it was, I'd never expected the Lord to answer a prayer so quickly, if you see what I mean. Because normally, like, if you're talking about a missing person, it could be days before he came back, or before they found him, and you don't know what sort of condition he would have been in. But it was almost like the Lord said to me, calm down, he's here. He's unharmed, and I had to have a good cry to myself because of the Lord's power and grace and just overall control of a situation. And I think it was probably when I said that prayer, it's probably just, I don't know. I think I was just saying it. Well, I prayed it in the sense that, this is a very serious situation, Lord, and it was just like that. The Lord had answered it with the answer that we wanted. that the lad was unharmed. Like I don't think there was anything physically harm to him, if you see what I mean. Well, not that I'm aware, but I don't think he did any harm to himself anyway. But no, it was just because in farming, like, there is a lot of pressure on farmers, and you know, they do have a high suicide rate. And for a lot of farmers, specifically young farmers as well, there's a lot of pressure on them because they think, you know, you've got this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your days, kind of thing. You know, this boy's having to take on, or is going to take on, his mum and dad's farm or something, like, you know, his dad's farming, and it, you know, the pressure and that sort of hardship really weighs hard on a lot of people, and you know, it was just a prayer and just showing faith like a mustard seed, and the Lord's able to do wondrous things, and it brought me to tears, really. So it was a wonderful experience, above all things. But it was, yeah.
So in that then, so the family with this boy, I guess, did they know that you prayed?
I just mentioned it. I never mentioned it to the lad or to his dad or anything, but I had mentioned it. Well, because I said to my friend who was in the car with me, I said, you know, do you mind if I just say a quiet word of prayer? Like, you didn't hear what I said. I just said a quiet word of prayer in my head. And after it, and I think a couple of days later, I'd mentioned it to his mum. I just said, you know, we're still praying for you and your family and your son and all the rest of it. You know, I think the mother has got a background of faith or something like that. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but she has got a background, because she was, because I was giving her a few words of scripture as encouragement to her. And she was coming back with words of scripture that, you know, were sound in terms of and how they would help in the situation. And I thought, well, there is a history there, and there's something there. So it's just a continuing to pray that, you know, that this sort of experience will bring the family closer to the Lord, because I don't think the rest of their family is quite close to the Lord as the mother is. So,
and that would have encouraged you as well, that God answered your prayer straight away. You put God to the test and He answered you. Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, I don't think I've ever had an answer to prayer quite as quick as that, really. In a situation like that, it was really humbling. You know, when we bring our prayers before the Lord, and I like that hymn, "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." Like, I mean, everybody was calling their friends to see if they could find them, but I had a friend in Jesus who knew exactly where he was, and he knew exactly what to do, and all I had to do was come to him in prayer, and here he was. He was literally stood right in front of me as I was driving around the corner, and I couldn't believe my eyes, really. It was quite an experience. So, well, thanks very much for sharing that story with us, Daniel, and also sharing your testimony with us. And thanks everyone for watching. If you've not yet trusted Lord Jesus as your saviour, then you could trust Him too. And the friend that Daniel has, one that's helped him, can help you too. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll be back next week with another video. If you have any questions from any of these videos, just get in touch with us on our Facebook page. Thanks very much for listening.